I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you've worked a double shift, come home reeking of fryer grease, and still had to smile through a customer's passive-aggressive, "You look tired. You deserve a medal, or at least a rent break." But life doesn't hand those out. So I showed up for shift number 6 that week, tied my apron tight and told myself, just make it to midnight. My name's Casey Navarro. I'm 27, I've got 2 roommates, 1 broken car, and the kind of student loan balance that could scare a small nation. And I work the closing shift at Brenner's, a mid-tier bar and grill inside a luxury hotel I could never afford to walk through unless I was carrying someone's tray. That night started like any other, until he stumbled in. It was a Thursday, and I remember because that's the night we get the weird crowd. Not weekend partiers, not business travelers, more like, I wasn't supposed to drink, but now I've got regrets and tequila breath, energy. At 10:37 p.m. He walked in wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my yearly income, sleeves wrinkled, shirt untucked, no tie. He looked less like a Wall Street power player and more like someone who had been dragged out of a gala against his will, hair disheveled, one shoe half off. He made it 3 steps inside before leaning against the hostess stand and mumbling something like, "I need room, floors moving." We didn't have a hostess, not at night, so I was the one who spotted him. "Sir, are you okay?" He looked at me, eyes glazed, squinted like I was a mirage. "Did I fire you already?" he asked. "No, then you're fine." He took another step and leaned on a chair like it had personally offended him. I walked over. "All right, easy, let's sit you down." "I don't sit with strangers. I'm your waitress. That makes us coworkers." That got a tiny smirk. He sank into the booth. "You're funny," he mumbled. "People don't talk to me like that. They probably want to keep their jobs." He closed his eyes. Lucky them. I got him a glass of water and some bread, both of which he ignored. Instead, he stared out the window at the valet stand, like he was watching a life he used to live. The bartender, Marvin, leaned in from behind the counter. "You know who that is?" "Nope." "That's Declan Roth." I blinked. "Who?" "Roth and Gray. Roth Tech, billionaire, owns half this city." I looked back at the man slowly sliding down his own booth like gravity was trying to erase him. "That guy," Marvin nodded. "Usually he's got security with him. Haven't seen him like this before." I exhaled. Great. The night I finally talk back to a billionaire, he's blacked out. After 20 minutes and 0 food orders, I tried to nudge him awake. "Hey, you need help getting somewhere." He opened one eye. "You know how many people ask me that with cameras in their hands?" I stayed quiet. He waved a hand. "Sorry, not your fault, just long day. Longer life." "You staying in the hotel?" He didn't answer. "You got a key?" He reached into his jacket, fumbled, and dropped a black card on the floor. I picked it up. "Suite 2703, I read aloud. "That's me," he said, eyes closing again. "I think, okay, you can't sleep here. Why not?" "Because if you snore loud enough to shake the wine rack, I'm the one who has to explain it to management." He laughed. Actually laughed, soft and raspy. "You're good," he said, "not just at this, people. You say that like you've met them." "I've met their lawyers." "Same thing." I got Marvin to cover the floor and helped Declan to his feet. He leaned on me, heavy but not dead weight, and mumbled apologies like he hadn't said thank you in a decade and was making up for lost time. We made it to the elevator with only one stumble. When the doors closed, he looked at me and said, "You're not going to sell this to a blog or something, are you?" I shook my head. "I'm not impressed enough to try." That made him smile. Suite 2703 was on the corner, giant double doors, private access keycard, the kind of hallway that smells like money and lemon polish. I unlocked it with the card, stepped inside, and froze. The place was massive, vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows. Art I didn't recognize, but could tell was worth more than my college degree. Declan dropped onto the nearest couch and groaned. "Thanks," he said. "You should eat something." He nodded. "Probably. Not tonight." I spotted a tray of untouched food on a nearby table, looked like high-end room service. Shrimp cocktail, lamb skewers, dessert untouched. You need anything else? I asked. No. Then I'm leaving this card on the counter. He nodded again. I turned to go. He said, wait. I looked back. You didn't take a photo. Should I have? That's what people do. I shrugged. People also throw fries at me when their wings come out wrong. I try not to model my behavior off them. He smiled again, and this time it stayed. I got back to the restaurant just in time to catch Marvin's "Where the hell did you go?" face. He's safe, I said. Marvin raised his eyebrows. Did he tip? I checked my apron. Nothing, of course. Figures, I muttered. The rest of the shift was normal. Table of 4 asked to split a check 10 ways. A guy at the bar tried to flirt by quoting movies I'd never seen. The dishwasher jammed when I got home at 2 a.m. I flopped into bed and forgot about Declan Roth, because I figured he'd forget about me. He didn't. A week later, I walked into Brenner's 15 minutes early, expecting another night of cleaning ketchup bottles and pretending not to overhear Tinder dates crash and burn. Instead, the host stand was gone. The menus were different. And 3 people in suits were standing in the lobby with clipboards like they were here to buy the building. I stopped mid-step. What? The floors were polished to the point of reflection. The wall art was changed. Even the logo on the front window was gone. No more Brenner's Bar and Grill. Now it just said, the Arlo. What the hell is the Arlo? I stepped back outside to check the hotel entrance. Same building. Same awning. But even the door handles were new. I went back in and looked around like I'd missed a memo. Marvin wasn't behind the bar. Jen, one of the other servers, was at a corner table stuffing flatware into new linen napkins, her mouth half open like she was in shock. Hey, I said, walking over. What's going on? She looked up like I'd just broken a spell. They sold it, she said. What? The hotel? The restaurant? All of it, I blinked. You serious? She nodded. Some buyer came in over the weekend, cleared the books, half the staff got bought out. Others were offered retention bonuses if they stayed quiet. Quiet about what? I don't know. That's the part no one understands. Before I could process that, someone in a headset approached. She was tall, sharp, clipboard in hand. Name? She asked. Casey Navarro. She scanned her list, then circled something. You're expected upstairs, executive level, elevator to the 27th. I'm what? They'll explain. This way. I stepped onto the 27th floor, sweating slightly under my work hoodie. Last time I was up here, I was helping a billionaire into his penthouse while trying not to think about how many hours I'd need to cover my next rent check. Now, I had no clue what I was walking into. The doors opened onto a sleek hallway, quiet, carpeted, with a scent that reminded me of pine and money. At the end of the hall, a receptionist sat behind a black marble desk. She stood as I approached. Miss Navarro. Yes, please go in. Mr. Roth is expecting you. I froze. Wait, Roth. She smiled faintly. He asked for you personally. The door behind her clicked open. The suite was completely different. No longer a hotel room, it looked like a boardroom crossed with a penthouse. Modern, minimal, and cold in a way that felt intentional. Declan Roth stood near the window, his back to me, looking out over the city like he was waiting for someone to tell him the view had changed. He turned at the sound of my footsteps. He looked better than last week. Sober, clean-shaven, in control. Like the man from the headline photos, not the one I peeled off the booth. Casey, he said. I blinked. You remember my name. He walked toward me, buttoning his jacket. I remember yours. I also remember how you didn't take a picture of me passed out, or sell the story, or ask for a thing. I shrugged. Didn't seem like you owed me anything. He tilted his head. Most people don't think that way. I stood there awkwardly. Why am I here? He motioned toward the lounge chairs. Sit, I'll explain. I didn't sit, not yet. Mr. Roth. Declan. Okay, Declan. What is this? He paused, then said, Do you know how much I paid for this building? I blinked. No, just under $190 million. Cash, I stared. Why? Because I was in it, he said. Because I passed out in that booth. Because someone found me on a night I could have wrecked everything, and instead of taking advantage, they walked me to my door. He looked at me carefully. You did that. I didn't know what to say, he continued. So I bought it, and I renamed it. And I restructured the restaurant and the entire floor it's on. I laughed, short, nervous. Okay, you bought a hotel because I didn't take a selfie. He nodded like it was obvious. No one ever treats me like a person anymore. You did. I crossed my arms. And now what? You want to pay me off, buy me a car, cover my rent? He shook his head. I want you to run it. Silence. I blinked slowly. What? The restaurant. I want it to be yours. I stared at him like he'd just offered me a spaceship. I'm not a manager. You're not yet, but you will be. I wait tables, and you're damn good at it. You know how to read a room. You diffuse drunks better than my security team. You remember names, no regulars, and you didn't hesitate when a stranger needed help. He stepped closer. I've seen all kinds of leaders. Most of them are trained. A few are born. He paused, you're undiscovered. I sat finally, because my knees weren't cooperating anymore. I don't have a business degree. You'll have a mentor, a team, you'll learn. I don't have savings. I'm not asking you to buy in. I'm offering you a full salary. Bonus structure, partial ownership over time, it's real. I stared at him, trying to find the trick, the catch, but his face stayed calm. This is real, I said quietly. It is. Why me? He smiled. Because the world doesn't hand things to people like you, or me when I started. So I'm handing you the keys before someone else tries to steal them. I looked down. My hands were shaking slightly. Then I looked back up and said, "What's the catch?" He raised an eyebrow. "You show up. You lead. You don't forget what it felt like to be ignored." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was true. And the name, the Arlo, it's yours if you want it. You can rename it. I thought for a long second, then asked, "Can we keep the name? Just change what it stands for," he smiled. "Absolutely." That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. I stayed in one of the guest suites. Declan insisted. Said it was part of the onboarding package. I called Jen and Marvin and told them everything. They didn't believe me. I told them they'd both been offered new roles, bigger pay, benefits, training. That got their attention. By 1 a.m., I was lying in a king-sized bed, staring at a ceiling painted to look like clouds, and I whispered to myself, this time next month I'll be running it, and maybe, just maybe, I'll finally belong to something that's mine. The first time someone called me ma'am, I nearly dropped my tablet. It was Marvin, messing around on my first official day as manager. He grinned while setting up the bar like he hadn't worked here longer than most of the walls had been painted. "Don't start," I warned, pointing at him. He saluted. "Yes, ma'am." We both laughed, but my palms were sweating under the clipboard. The rebranded restaurant, the Arlo Kitchen, had been soft-launched 3 days ago. No press, no public blowout. Just a quiet reopening with a remodeled layout, new uniforms, and a menu that somehow cost double and looked half as complicated. It still smelled like grilled onions and lemon polish. It still buzzed with the nervous rhythm of servers preparing for a crowd. But now, I wasn't wearing the apron. I was wearing a blazer, secondhand, a little too stiff, but mine. I walked the floor like I belonged there, mostly. The new team was a mix. Some of the old staff stayed, Marvin, Jen, 2 kitchen guys I knew by first name and temperament only. But we had new faces too, people with resumes, hospitality degrees, clean shoes and opinions. There was one in particular, Devon Marks, corporate transplant, early 30s. Smiled like he knew something you didn't. On day 2, he stopped me near the new espresso station. "Casey," he said with a practiced friendliness. "Quick word." "Sure." "I had some notes about your table rotation strategy." I blinked. "Okay, it's just a little outdated. You're assigning sections like it's still a sports bar." I glanced at his clipboard. He'd color-coded a spreadsheet with arrows and foot traffic models like we were launching a restaurant on Mars. "I appreciate the feedback," I said, "but I want to keep it simple for now. Let people get a feel for the space." He tilted his head. Of course, it's just the floor isn't optimized. I smiled tightly, and yet we're still making more in tips this week than last month combined. He didn't smile back, but he didn't push it either, not yet. By day 5, my feet ached like they were filing complaints with HR. I knew how to run a floor, but managing supply chain, payroll systems, vendor contracts, whole other beast. Declan had hired a consultant to walk me through the back end, but the learning curve was steep. "You're doing fine," he said over coffee in the private lounge. "You say that every time I mess something up. That's because everyone does. The difference is, you're not pretending you don't." I stared at him. "You sure I'm not a vanity project?" He paused, sipped his coffee. "No, I'm not sure. You're a risk. But so was I once. This industry doesn't change unless someone like you steps in and makes it uncomfortable." I exhaled. "That's supposed to be encouraging." "Yes." The first major test came on a Thursday night. We were booked solid for a private party, some tech investor celebrating a funding round, expensive guests, influencers, cameras. Everything was going smoothly until the power blinked. Then blinked again and went out, full blackout, just for the restaurant level. Marvin cursed. Jen froze mid-pour. I heard something crash in the kitchen. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in soft red glow. I radioed maintenance. Nothing. My stomach dropped. Then Devon stepped in. "I told you we needed a redundant fuse grid," he said, pulling out his phone. "Now's not the time," I snapped. "Exactly. We should have tested the system earlier." I ignored him and walked toward the back hallway, only to find 3 people from the party trying to sneak into the kitchen. "Excuse me," I said. "Staff only." One of them smirked. "It's fine. We're friends with the guest of honor." Still not a hallway. They rolled their eyes but backed off. When I turned around, I saw Devon standing by the host stand, arms crossed, watching. I got the power back after 22 minutes and one very panicked call to the facility's head, who reset the breakers manually. We comped desserts. Everyone got champagne. Somehow, no one left angry. But the next morning, Devon left a 3-page operations memo on my desk titled, "A Proposal for Professionalizing Floor Management." I didn't read it. Instead, I added a sticky note that said, "Next time, offer help instead of notes." I stuck it on his locker. That weekend, things smoothed out. Emily, a new hostess I'd hired from a nearby cafe, turned out to be a scheduling wizard. Jen stepped into training new servers. Even Marvin started mentoring the new barback without being asked. We were humming until the meeting. Monday, 3 p.m. Declan called me to the conference suite. Inside, 2 suits I didn't recognize. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and perfect posture. A man with a laptop open and fingers tapping like they were in a race against time. "This is Delia Nix," Declan said, "and her associate, Brian. They're with Roth Hospitality Group." I nodded, sat down. Delia smiled, professional and practiced. "We've been reviewing the transition," she said. "Impressive numbers for a soft open." "Thank you, but we have some questions." I glanced at Declan. He gave me the tiniest nod. "You've got this," Delia continued. "Some investors are concerned about the ownership structure. You're listed as managing partner, but your equity is still in escrow." "I know. And you've never managed a property of this size before." "That's also true." Brian chimed in. "There's concern that your presence creates liability." I stared at him. "Because I used to wait tables." Delia raised a hand. "No one's doubting your effort, but this property was part of a larger real estate bundle, and the board is asking questions." "What kind of questions?" "Whether your continued leadership is part of the long-term strategy." My jaw tensed. "I'm not here as a placeholder." "No one's saying you are, but alternatives may be explored." Declan didn't say a word, just watched. I stood up. "Thanks for the update," and walked out. That night I stood in the walk-in cooler and screamed into a bag of brioche buns. Then I walked back out, straightened my blazer, and told Jen she was doing a great job. Because that's what managers do. They stand up, even when the room wants them to sit down. It started with a clipboard, not mine. Devon's, Monday morning, 9 a.m. I walked into the break room and found it sitting on the table, perfectly aligned, papers flipped open like an invitation to panic. On top, a printed email with the subject line, Interim Management Plan Arlo Kitchen. My stomach dropped before I even read it. The email outlined a potential transition strategy. Devon as temporary general manager, pending performance concerns regarding current leadership. My name wasn't on the thread, but the sentence that did it. This proposed change ensures operational continuity during a period of increased scrutiny. I stood there for a solid 30 seconds, blinking at the words like they might vanish if I looked long enough. They didn't. I grabbed the clipboard, walked straight to Devon's locker, and slammed it shut with one hand. He turned the corner a second later, holding a protein shake and wearing that same politician grin. Morning. You left this out, I said, holding the clipboard up. He didn't even flinch. Oh. Must have slipped. You emailed the board behind my back. I sent a proposal, calmly, professionally. That's what managers do. No, managers fix things. Leaders take responsibility. He tilted his head, all sympathy and spin. You've done your best. No one doubts that. But restaurants are businesses, not pet projects. I stared at him, then set the clipboard down on the floor and stepped on it. Get out of my way. He didn't move, just smiled wider. You think Declan's going to protect you forever? I walked past him without answering. Because I didn't know, I found Declan in the back courtyard. He was pacing, phone in hand, coat off, hair windblown. The skyline behind him looked just as tense as his face. You knew, I said. He turned. I just got off the call. You knew before that, I said. They're making moves. I've been trying to hold them back. Then say that. He rubbed his jaw. They're afraid of you failing, of me backing something they can't quantify. So what now? They'll call a vote, he said. The hospitality board within the week. I stared. That fast? They want resolution before the quarterly meeting. I crossed my arms. Do I even have a chance? He met my eyes. Yes, but not if you try to win it their way. I waited. He stepped closer. You want to prove you belong here. Stop defending yourself. Show them the reason I backed you wasn't charity. Show them what this place is with you at the front, not behind a clipboard. How? Let the guests speak louder than the suits. So that's what I did. I canceled Devon's restructured weekend schedule and rebuilt it from scratch. Every regular guest we had, I called them myself. Invited them to a community night at the Arlo. No fancy menus. No dress code. Just real food, good service, and the team that had kept the place standing through the chaos. I even printed postcards and passed them out to staff, not guests, asking, "Tell us what this place means to you." We pinned the responses on a corkboard at the entrance. Within 2 days, it was full. One said, "This place reminds me of where I first met my wife, not because it's fancy, but because it feels real." Another, "Casey knows I like my water without ice and my wife's name is spelled with an I-E. That matters." By Friday night, we had a wait list of 40 and a line out the door. Even Marvin wore a tie for the first time in 7 years. "I'm sweating through it," he whispered. "But damn if I don't feel powerful." Devon didn't show. Smart move. The suits did, though. Delia, Brian, 2 others I hadn't seen before. They sat in the corner, arms crossed, pretending to blend in while writing notes like they were grading a science fair. I didn't cater to them. I didn't comp their food. I didn't ask how they liked it. I just worked the room, not as a server, not as a boss. As someone who knew what this place was, I checked on a table of teachers celebrating a retirement. I brought a glass of lemon water to a woman who didn't ask for it but always ordered it. I fixed a wobbly table before it became a complaint. And I laughed, not because I had to, but because I remembered how it felt to earn a space, not just occupy it. The next morning I was called to the boardroom, same long table, same silver-haired Delia at the center. This time she looked intrigued, not impressed, not dismissive. Just waiting. Brian opened a laptop. Delia spoke first. You hosted over 160 guests last night. No incidents, strong reviews, above-average sales. I nodded once. You canceled the PR rollout and replaced it with hand-printed flyers. Yes. You removed the digital tip prompts and reinstated handwritten slips. Yes. And you asked guests to write notes on note cards. They're called postcards, I said. She raised an eyebrow. Unconventional. Effective, I said. People don't fight for spreadsheets. They fight for places that fight for them. Silence. Then Brian said, and what happens when you fail, when margins shrink, when sentiment isn't enough? Then we adjust, I said. But we don't erase the soul to please investors. Delia sat back. Declan, at the end of the table, finally spoke. Casey built something, not from metrics, from trust. You all wanted numbers. She gave you loyalty. That's harder to fake. Brian typed something. Delia folded her hands. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Expect a decision within 48 hours. I stood, then paused. And if it's no, Delia looked up. Then we thank you for your service. I nodded, then left. I didn't go home that night. I walked the floor after close, tables wiped, chairs stacked, kitchen silent. Marvin found me by the service bar. You okay? Not sure. You know what they'll never understand? I looked at him. You made this place better without making it unrecognizable. That's harder than it looks. I smiled. Thanks. Then I went home and waited. 2 days later I got the call, not from Declan, from Delia. We've reviewed the case, she said, her voice as formal as always. There was a motion to replace you. I held my breath. It was denied. 5-2, you stay. I blinked. Wait, really? Yes, and the board added an additional amendment. I frowned. What amendment? Your escrowed equity has been converted. To what? Full ownership. 49%, with decision-making authority. I didn't say anything. Delia continued. You earned this. Even the ones who voted no said so. I nodded into the silence. Thank you. You'll get the paperwork this afternoon. She paused. One more thing, Casey. Yeah. Next time you throw a community night, invite us sooner. And she hung up. That night, I unlocked the front doors of the Arlo alone. The sun had just dipped past the skyline. The air smelled like possibility and fresh basil. I flipped the sign to open and stood there for a second, remembering the booth where I first met a man too drunk to stand and too rich to be helped, and thinking how wild it was that kindness, not ambition, not polish, kindness was the thing that got me here. Not luck, not charity, just one decision to walk someone home. 1 year later, I stood behind the host stand, not in uniform, not on a shift, just watching. The Arlo buzzed with a kind of energy that didn't exist 12 months ago. You could feel it when the doors opened. Warm, familiar, like the place had finally figured out what it wanted to be. There were still high-end meals and linen napkins, but now we had a locals table that was always open for regulars. We hosted birthday dinners for staff. Marvin got the corner bar remodeled to his specs. Emily, our former hostess, now ran the brunch shift like a battlefield general. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And mine. 49% mine, to be exact. I'd framed the official paperwork in my office, not because I needed the reminder, but because part of me still didn't believe it was real. Declan had kept his distance the last few months. Still checked in, still replied to messages, but he'd started focusing on his next big venture. I figured our chapters had closed quietly, as clean as they'd opened, until today. At exactly 3 p.m., a black sedan pulled up in front of the restaurant. Declan stepped out. No entourage. No press. Just a gray coat, dark sunglasses, and that same tired smirk I'd seen the night he slumped into my booth. I met him at the door. Thought you forgot about us, I said. Never. We hugged, briefly, firmly. Like people who'd survived the same storm. You look like a CEO now, I said, nodding at the coat. You look like someone I probably couldn't afford to hire anymore. I laughed. He looked around. This place feels different. Because it is. He sat at the corner booth. His booth. I brought over 2 lemon waters. Habit. He raised an eyebrow. You remembered. You think I got this far by forgetting things? He nodded, smiling. Then he slid a folder across the table. I blinked. What's this? Call it a retirement gift. You're not retiring. Not exactly. I opened the folder. Inside, documents. Ownership transfers, corporate holdings, property assets, and at the top, in bold, Roth Holdings asset transfer, the Arlo Group. My eyes darted. You're giving me your share? He nodded. I'm stepping away, fully. New chapter. Declan, it's already filed, he said. The board signed off. The Arlo is yours. 100%. I sat back. Hard. But why? He looked down at his glass. I bought this place the night I was supposed to lose it all. My father passed that morning. I didn't tell anyone. I drank my way through the wake, stumbled into the hotel, and figured that was it. That the name Roth would just be another line in a long list of guys who built too much and died too soon. I stayed silent. He went on. But you didn't treat me like a ghost. You treated me like someone still worth helping. I never forgot that. He leaned in. This place wasn't just rescued, it was reborn because you didn't flinch. I felt my throat tighten. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, he said. Just keep it alive. The next few days were a blur. Lawyers, notaries, staff meetings, champagne corks, Marvin insisted. I told the team the truth, that the ownership was now local, permanent, personal, that nothing would change, but everything just became more ours. There were tears. Even from Devon, who now worked under Emily and had learned the valuable lesson of humility through enforced brunch shifts. The plaque out front was changed on a Wednesday afternoon. It didn't say Roth anymore. It just read, "The Arlo, a place to belong." A few weeks later, I got a letter. Not email, not text. An actual handwritten letter in Navy stationery from Declan. No return address. No fancy logo, just my name. And a single page. Casey, there are moments in life when everything we thought we were supposed to become is replaced by who we're actually meant to be. This place helped me see that. You helped me believe it. I don't need credit. I just need to know someone real is still at the wheel. You are. P.S. If you ever franchise this thing, call it The Walk-In. Everyone who's ever screamed into a freezer will get the joke. D. I laughed. Then folded the letter and tucked it into the same folder where I kept the original restaurant floor map. Legacy. Paper-clipped. On the 1-year anniversary of the rebrand, we closed the restaurant early. Not for maintenance, not for renovations, for a party. Staff only. No cameras. No influencers. Just the team. People who had been there at the start and those who helped it grow. There was music. Laughter. A cocktail named The Clipboard that Marvin made just to roast Devon. And at the end of the night, I stood on the host stand, raised my glass and said, to the people who stayed, to the ones who showed up even when no one clapped, and to the guests who reminded us what this place was always supposed to be, a second home. We clinked glasses. And I knew, for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for life to change anymore. I was the change.